I discovered that some wounds don't bleed. They calcify into steel resolve. My name is Mason Reynolds, and I'm 35 years old. I spend my days remodeling old houses, turning broken things beautiful again while living alone in the home I fought to keep. When I found my wife Hazel kissing my friend Kyle in our kitchen just weeks after her cancer remission, everything I believed about loyalty shattered. I had slept in hospital chairs, tracked medication schedules, and sold my truck to pay for treatments, only to watch her celebrate survival in another man's arms. For months, I gathered evidence quietly, working with my attorney Rosa Alvarez to document their affair. Even when Hazel's cancer returned and Kyle abandoned her, I refused to become her safety net again. Some betrayals don't deserve second chances. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I didn't expect to find betrayal wrapped in laughter that Tuesday evening. The Chinese takeout was still warm in its brown paper bag when I pulled into our driveway earlier than usual. The general contractor had canceled our site meeting, and I thought I'd surprise Hazel with her favorite orange chicken and those cream cheese wontons she always stole from my plate. The sound hit me the moment I unlocked the front door. Hazel's laugh, light and carefree in a way I hadn't heard since before the diagnosis. But it wasn't alone. A deeper chuckle wound through it, one I recognized from countless poker nights and backyard barbecues. Kyle's voice. My footsteps were quiet on the stairs, years of construction work teaching me where old wood would creak. Each step up felt like moving through molasses, my mind refusing to connect the dots even as my gut twisted with certainty. Remember how denial feels? Like a shield you know is paper thin, but you hold it up anyway. The kitchen door stood half open. Through the gap, I saw them. Kyle pressing Hazel against our refrigerator, her fingers twisted in his shirt while my Beat Cancer calendar hung inches from their heads. The same calendar where I'd marked every chemo session, every blood draw, every night I'd held her hair back while she vomited. I set the takeout on the counter with deliberate care. So, this is how remission tastes? They didn't jump apart like guilty teenagers. That's what got me. The lack of shame. Hazel's eyes flashed with disgust before guilt even touched them. Kyle, all nervous energy wrapped in fake confidence, cleared his throat. Mason, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. My voice came out steady, surprising me. I held her hand through chemo. Where were you then? Sending memes. Don't make this about your martyr act. Hazel's words crackled with defensive heat. You make me feel like I owe you everything. Kyle listens to me. Right, I said. He listened while I was at the pharmacy? While I was cleaning the bucket you threw up in? Kyle puffed up like a threatened rooster. Back off, man. She's allowed happiness. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on Hazel. Look at me and say this started after remission. The silence stretched until she broke it with words meant to wound. It started before. The argument spilled out ugly and raw, her accusing me of turning her into a patient, me counting off the nights I'd kept her warm when she shook with chills, both of them insisting this was real. When Hazel finally said, "I'm choosing him," I felt something crystallize inside me. Then I'm choosing me. Hazel's laugh turned cruel. Go ahead. See how it looks when everyone finds out you abandoned your wife right after cancer. Think anyone will hire a contractor who dumps his sick spouse? I stood there, watching her smirk with Kyle's hand on her shoulder, and understood. They planned to use my own loyalty as a weapon against me. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment of care would be twisted into chains to bind me. The next morning hit different. No alarms for medication, no schedule of pills laid out on the counter, just silence and the tick of the kitchen clock. Hazel's words from last night echoed in my head. Abandoned your wife right after cancer. The threat lay bare, wrapped in fake concern. I poured coffee into my old job site thermos, the one with paint splatters mapping years of work. The familiar scent brought back mornings spent rushing to the hospital, gulping burnt coffee between blood draws and oncologist visits. Now it was just me and my thoughts, trying to sort truth from manipulation. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I pulled up the number I'd saved months ago, just in case. 3 rings, then a crisp voice. Rosa Alvarez's office. I need a consultation. It's about divorce. The word tasted strange. My wife's threatening to use her cancer history against me. 2 o'clock today, the receptionist said. Bring any documentation you have. Rosa's office looked nothing like the Shark Tank I'd expected. Warm woods, soft lighting, and a woman whose calm demeanor masked pure steel. She listened without interrupting as I laid out the basics, the affair, the threats, the manipulation. "Show me what you have," she said. I pulled out my phone. I copied these last month when Hazel left her phone unlocked. The text thread between her and Kyle scrolled back months, deep into her treatment. Pictures, meetups planned around my work schedule, hearts and promises. Good start. Rose's pen moved across her legal pad. But we need more. Bank statements showing patterns, credit card bills, witness statements, anything proving the affair predated remission. Where do I begin? Financial records first. Go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Look for hidden accounts, unusual charges, hotel stays. Back home, I spread bank statements across the kitchen table where we used to eat together. 2 hours in, I found it. A credit card statement I'd never seen before, opened 6 months ago. The charges lined up perfectly. Every girls' night matched to charges at Kyle's favorite restaurants, his condo's parking garage. My next stop was 3 doors down. Cheryl, our neighbor, answered on the first knock. Her doorbell camera faced our driveway. "I saw them," she said before I could ask. "Kyle's truck, always parking down the block during your late jobs. I have the footage backed up." Felt something wasn't right. The memory card felt tiny in my palm as I slid it into my laptop. The video quality was sharp enough to cut. Hazel slipping into Kyle's truck, both of them laughing like teenagers getting away with something. Timestamps placed it squarely during her treatment, when I thought she was resting while I worked extra hours to cover medical bills. "Got you," I whispered to the screen. My phone buzzed. Hazel's text glowed. "We need to talk. Dinner tomorrow. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." The fluorescent lights of Jerry's diner made everything look harsh and unreal. I'd picked this place on purpose. Public, busy, impossible for scenes. Sliding into the vinyl booth, I noticed how Hazel and Kyle sat shoulder to shoulder across from me, a united front. My coffee came black and bitter, just like this conversation was about to be. "You're making me into some kind of villain," Hazel started, stirring creamer into her cup with sharp little clinks. "Do you know what it felt like, being your patient instead of your wife?" I set my mug down carefully. "Funny. I remember being your husband through every blood draw, every scan, every midnight rush to the ER. That's exactly what I mean." Her voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. Everything was about cancer, pills, appointments, schedules. Kyle lets me breathe. He sees me as a woman, not a diagnosis. "While I was keeping you alive?" The words came out steady, masking the tremor I felt inside. "Tell me, Kyle, how many times did you hold her hair back when the chemo hit? How many insurance appeals did you file?" Kyle leaned forward, all fake confidence and rehearsed lines. "Look, man, Hazel's made her choice. She chose me. You need to respect that." "Her choice?" I almost laughed. "You mean like how she chose to start sleeping with you while I was working double shifts to pay her medical bills?" Hazel's face flushed. "Don't you dare throw that in my face. I supported you for years while you built your business. All those renovation jobs, all those long hours, I was there. I deserve half of everything you've built. You want the house too, right?" I kept my voice level. "The business I started before we met? The tools I bought with my own money? I'm entitled to it," she snapped. "I'll take you for everything if I have to." I met her eyes, seeing nothing of the woman I'd once loved. "You'll get honesty. You'll get fair. But you don't get my future. You sanctimonious bastard." She grabbed her purse, sliding out of the booth. Kyle followed like an obedient puppy. "You'll hear from my lawyer." The bell above the door jingled as they stormed out. I sat there a moment longer, letting my coffee grow cold while I typed a quick update to Rosa. Her response came fast. "Good job staying calm. Document everything about this meeting. The law protects premarital assets and your business. Don't engage further without me present." The drive home felt longer than usual. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, Hazel's threats about taking everything echoing in my head. The same road I'd driven countless times rushing her to chemo now felt like a path to battle. I pulled into my driveway, noticing Kyle's truck parked down the block. Light spilled from my front windows I'd replaced myself last spring. Inside, I found Hazel yanking clothes from hangers, stuffing them into garbage bags. She whirled to face me, mascara smeared. "You think I'm going quietly? You don't get to decide how this ends." I stood in the doorway, watching Hazel tear through our bedroom like a hurricane. Clothes flew from hangers, drawers slammed open and shut, and her fury filled every corner of the room I'd repainted just months ago when she'd wanted a fresh start after remission. "You think you're so noble," she spat, jamming designer blouses into a suitcase, blouses I'd bought her to celebrate her first day back at work. "Kyle actually sees me. He doesn't treat me like some fragile thing that needs saving." My phone was already recording in my pocket. Rosa had been clear. Document everything. The camera caught Hazel's reflection in the mirror as she grabbed the jewelry box from our dresser. "That loyalty of yours?" She yanked off her wedding ring, tossing it onto the bed. "It's suffocating. Kyle makes me feel alive." Alive. The word tasted bitter. Remember when alive meant making it through another round of chemo? She spun toward me, eyes blazing. "That's exactly what I mean. Everything's about cancer with you. Poor Hazel, sick Hazel, fragile Hazel who needs Mason's sacrifice." Her voice dripped mockery. "Kyle loves me, not for being your personal redemption project." I let the camera keep rolling as she ranted. Each word was another nail in the coffin of our marriage, another piece of evidence for Rosa. The next morning, Rosa filed for temporary orders before Hazel's attorney could make a move. By noon, we had court-ordered protection for my house and business. Hazel couldn't touch either until the divorce was final. That afternoon, I drove to Carol and Frank's place, the same house where I'd asked for their blessing to marry Hazel 6 years ago. The manila envelope in my hands felt heavy as lead. Carol's hands shook as she poured coffee. Frank sat rigid in his chair, watching me spread out the evidence on their worn kitchen table. Credit card statements, text messages, hotel receipts dated during Hazel's treatment. "This was happening while she was sick?" Carol's voice cracked. While I was selling my truck to cover her deductible." I kept my tone gentle. "While I was sleeping in hospital chairs." Frank picked up a photo from the doorbell camera. Hazel kissing Kyle in his truck, timestamp showing 2 days before her final chemo session. His weathered face seemed to age years in seconds. "We raised her better than this," Carol whispered, tears tracking down her cheeks. Frank just stared at the image, disappointment etched in every line of his face. The silence said more than words ever could. I left them with copies of everything. They needed to understand why I couldn't be the safety net anymore, why their daughter's actions had consequences. That night, I sat in my dark living room, listening to Hazel's final exit. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle windows. Kyle's truck rumbled to life outside. They were gone. My phone lit up with her text. "You'll regret this when everyone hears you left a cancer survivor." The morning sun filtered through blinds I'd fixed months ago, warming an empty bed that finally felt like mine again. No alarms set for medication schedules, no quiet sobs from the bathroom. Just silence, and for the first time in years, silence felt like peace. I breathed in deep, savoring the scent of fresh coffee brewing, strong and black, the way I liked it before Hazel insisted we switch to some fancy vanilla blend that always left a sickly sweet coating in my mouth. Remember those mornings when every little compromise felt like love instead of surrender? The memory stung less now. My workshop waited in the garage, tools lined up like old friends who'd stayed loyal through everything. I took careful photos of each piece. The industrial table saw I'd saved 3 months to buy. Specialty planes passed down from my grandfather, rows of chisels kept razor sharp. Rosa needed documentation for everything I'd owned before the marriage. "Mason?" Rosa's voice carried both warmth and steel when she called. "The judge signed our temporary orders. The house and business are protected until the final decree." My shoulders dropped tension I hadn't realized I was carrying. "She can't touch any of it?" "Not without facing contempt charges. You're safe to work, sleep, and breathe without looking over your shoulder." The relief hit like summer rain after drought. I thanked Rosa, hung up, and just stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. The law saw what was right. The truth had weight. An old rocking chair sat in the corner of my shop, waiting for restoration. I'd picked it up at an estate sale months ago, solid bones under peeling paint and wobbling joints. My hands knew what to do. Strip away damage, reinforce what was sound, rebuild what was broken. The rhythm of sandpaper against wood settled my thoughts. You know that feeling when you're working with your hands and everything else falls away? When the only sound is your own breathing and the rasp of steel wool revealing clean grain underneath? That's where I found my center again. By sunset, the chair's skeleton stood true, ready for its second life. The house felt different that night. Not empty, peaceful. I stretched out in bed, no phone set to wake me for med checks, no guilt about sleeping through till morning. The ceiling fan hummed its steady lullaby, and I drifted off without carrying anyone else's burdens. The buzz jolted me awake at 2 a.m. sharp. My phone's screen cast blue light across the darkness, an unknown number flashing. Old instincts kicked in. 2 years of midnight emergencies, hospital calls, fever spikes that needed watching. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But when I answered, Hazel's voice came through faint as a ghost. "It's back." The words hit like a hammer to glass. "It's back." My hand went numb around the phone as Hazel's breathing filled the silence. 2 years of hospital corridors and chemistry names flashed behind my eyes. I set the phone down without answering. The darkness pressed in, thick with memories of nights spent counting breaths, checking temperatures, timing medications. But this time, those memories carried the bitter taste of her betrayal, of Kyle's hands on her in our kitchen, of secrets wrapped in lies. The next morning's sun hadn't fully cleared the trees when Carol's knock echoed through my house. I opened the door to find her looking smaller somehow, wrinkled hands clutching her purse like a shield. "Mason, please," she started, eyes red-rimmed. "I know what Hazel did was wrong, but she needs help. The doctors say it's aggressive this time." I leaned against the doorframe, feeling the solid wood at my back. "Carol, I held her hand through hell once. She chose to throw that away." "She made a terrible mistake," Carol's voice cracked. "But how can you live with yourself if—" "Don't." The word came out sharp. "Don't use guilt as a weapon. Hazel did enough of that." Carol's shoulders slumped. "Kyle's gone, you know. The moment her tests came back positive, he disappeared. Won't answer calls, moved out of his apartment. She has no one." Something cold settled in my chest. Not satisfaction, not quite, but a grim confirmation. Kyle, who'd stood in my kitchen claiming real love, had run like a coward when reality hit. Part of me wanted to laugh at the bitter justice of it. Rosa's call came that afternoon. "Hazel's attorney filed for emergency spousal support," she said, her voice carrying that calm steel I'd come to trust. "They're citing her medical condition and your historical role as caregiver." "They really think that'll work?" I paced my workshop, sawdust crunching under my boots. After what she did? "Meet me at my office. I've got something they won't expect." An hour later, I sat across from Rosa as she laid out photographs, bank statements, and hotel receipts in neat rows. "Cohabitation with Kyle during your marriage invalidates most of her claims," she explained, tapping a particularly damning credit card statement. "Plus, the timing of her affair, during treatment you were funding, that's going to matter to the judge." "They'll try to paint me as heartless," I said, studying a photo of Kyle's truck parked outside our house during my hospital shifts. Rosa's eyes flashed. "Let them try. Courts don't reward betrayal, Mason, no matter how sad the story." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Amanda, Kyle's girlfriend. We should talk. I have things you need to see." I stared at the message, remembering Kyle's swagger, his claims of love for Hazel, his vanishing act when cancer returned. What secrets did his girlfriend hold? I spotted Amanda instantly when I walked into the coffee shop, her back straight as steel, fingers drumming against a manila folder thick enough to tell stories. She had Kyle's taste written all over her, sharp features, designer clothes, the kind of confidence that could cut glass. But there was something else there too, a controlled fury I recognized from my own mirror. "Mason." She nodded as I sat down. "Thanks for meeting me." "Seemed important," I said, watching her hands still their drumming. She laughed, but it wasn't happy. "Oh, it is. See, while Kyle was playing house with your wife, he was also playing devoted boyfriend with me. 6 years together, joint accounts, family holidays, the whole fairy tale." She flipped open the folder. "Until I found these." My coffee went cold as Amanda laid out her evidence like playing cards. Screenshots of texts between Kyle and Hazel, dating back to the middle of her treatment. Hotel receipts matching dates Hazel had claimed were girls' nights. Photos from restaurant security cameras showing them together when Kyle told Amanda he was working late. "He used our joint account to buy her gifts." Amanda's voice carried that deadly calm that comes before storms. "While you were selling your truck for her treatment, he was buying her jewelry with my money." I studied a photo of them laughing outside a hotel, dated 3 days after a particularly rough chemo session. "What are you planning to do?" Amanda's smile turned sharp. "Everything. I'm going to his workplace tomorrow with copies of all of this. His family's getting a special delivery of evidence. His precious reputation? She snapped the folder shut. Gone by lunch. He deserves it, I said quietly. They both do. Amanda leaned forward. Kyle's been bragging to everyone about his true love with Hazel, telling people you were controlling, that she needed saving. Well, let's see how their love story holds up when everyone knows the truth. My phone buzzed. Rosa calling. I stepped outside to answer while Amanda gathered her things. Hazel's lawyer is pushing hard, Rosa reported. They're claiming emotional abandonment during her initial treatment, trying to justify the affair. We need to move fast. Perfect timing, I said, watching Amanda stride to her car. I think Kyle's about to have a very bad day. The next morning, I took a deliberate detour past Kyle's office building. Amanda's car was already there, parked right by the entrance. As I idled at a red light, I watched her stride through the glass doors, that manila folder clutched like a weapon. I couldn't hear through the windows, but I didn't need to. The lobby's security desk had a clear view of everything. Amanda's dramatic entrance, Kyle's face draining of color as he stepped off the elevator, his boss pausing mid-conversation to watch the scene unfold. Amanda's voice carried even through the glass as she shouted, "Ask him about Hazel." The folder's contents scattered across the lobby floor like autumn leaves, each page a nail in Kyle's coffin. The light turned green. I drove away as Kyle's co-workers bent to pick up the evidence of his betrayal, leaving him to face the consequences he'd earned. Word spread fast about Amanda's showdown at Kyle's office. His coworker Jim, who'd done tile work with me on a few jobs, texted me the play-by-play that afternoon. Amanda had walked straight to Kyle's manager's desk, dropped a stack of photos that spilled across his keyboard, and said in a voice that carried across the open floor plan, "Your senior account manager is sleeping with a cancer patient he stole from her husband. Here's every receipt he paid with our joint account." The whispers started immediately. Kyle tried to grab the photos, but Amanda was faster. She stepped back and announced to the gathering crowd, "While Mason Reynolds sold his truck to pay for his wife's chemo, Kyle here was using my money to buy her gifts. What kind of parasite does that?" Kyle's face had gone ghost white. "Amanda, please." "Please what? Keep quiet about how you funded your affair with our joint savings, or how you told Hazel I didn't exist." She turned to his manager. "Check his expense reports. I bet client dinners match these hotel receipts perfectly." I could picture the scene. Kyle's carefully constructed image crumbling as his colleagues passed around proof of his betrayal. Amanda had walked out with her head high, leaving Kyle to face the aftermath. But she wasn't done. By nightfall, she'd drained their joint accounts. The next morning, security cameras caught her taking a baseball bat to his BMW in the company parking lot. When Kyle's sister called me, asking if the screenshots Amanda posted online were real, I simply said, "Ask your brother about the jewelry he bought my wife." That night, I slept better than I had in months. Maybe it was knowing Kyle was finally facing his own storm, or maybe it was the text from Jim saying Kyle had been placed on indefinite leave pending an ethics review. Either way, the silence in my house felt like justice. The next morning, I met Rosa at her office to prepare for the settlement meeting. She'd arranged the conference room like a war room, documents spread across the table in precise stacks. "Kyle's implosion helps us," she said, sorting through papers. "It proves the affair, the financial misconduct, everything. But we need one more piece." She tapped the empty space at the end of the table. "Something personal. Something that shows exactly what you gave up for." I knew exactly what she meant. At home, in my bedside drawer, was a letter Hazel had written during her worst chemo week. Her handwriting was shaky but determined, filling 3 pages with gratitude for how I'd kept her alive when she couldn't stand herself. Back at my house, I pulled out the letter, my jaw clenching as I read her words again. "Mason, you're the only reason I'm fighting. Your love is stronger than this cancer." The paper felt heavy with betrayal now. I slipped the letter into a protective sleeve, running my thumb across her signature. Tomorrow, I'd face Hazel across Rosa's conference table, and this letter would be the final nail in her demands. Let her try to paint me as the villain now. My phone lit up with a text from Rosa. "Conference room 9 a.m. Ready?" I set the letter on top of my briefcase and typed back, "Ready." Rosa and I sat in her conference room, early morning light filtering through vertical blinds. The evidence lay in precise stacks before us. Bank statements, doorbell camera stills, text message logs. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. "Remember," Rosa said quietly, "let me handle the legal points." Your job is to stay calm no matter what they say. She straightened her blazer. If Hazel tries to bait you, just look at me. The door opened. Hazel walked in with her attorney, Richard Mills, a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a late-night legal commercial. The sight of her hit me harder than I'd expected. She was thinner, almost gaunt, but her eyes still held that familiar defiance. No Kyle hovering at her shoulder this time. He was probably too busy watching his life unravel, courtesy of Amanda's surgical revenge. I remembered the last time I'd seen Hazel this frail, during her first round of chemo. Back then, I'd have moved mountains to ease her pain. Now, watching her settle into the chair across from me, all I felt was a dull ache where sympathy used to live. Mills didn't waste time on pleasantries. My client requires substantial spousal support, he announced, sliding a proposal across the table. Given her medical condition and Mr. Reynolds' abandonment during her time of need. Objection, Rosa cut in smoothly. Let's be precise about abandonment. She opened her first folder. We have documentation of Mrs. Reynolds' cohabitation with Kyle Bennett during marriage, including joint lease applications dated 3 months before her remission announcement. Hazel's fingers tightened on her armrest. I kept my face neutral, just like Rosa had coached me. Furthermore, Rosa continued, bank records show significant marital assets diverted to expenses shared with Mr. Bennett. The Nordstrom card opened in March, the weekend trips to Vancouver. She laid out receipts like playing cards, all while my client was selling personal property to cover medical bills. Mills shifted in his chair. The court will consider Mrs. Reynolds' contributions to building her husband's business. The business predates the marriage by 4 years, Rosa interrupted. We have incorporation documents and tax returns proving Mr. Reynolds' sole ownership. Mrs. Reynolds' name appears on 0 contracts, licenses, or insurance policies. I watched Hazel's facade crack slightly. She'd always claimed she supported me through the lean years, but the evidence told a different story. Every remodel, every permit, every client check, it was all documented in my name alone. That's when I reached for the final piece of evidence. Without a word, I slid Hazel's letter across the polished wood. 3 pages of her shaky handwriting, dated during her worst chemo week. She recognized it immediately. I saw it in the way her shoulders tensed. Mills frowned. What's this? A letter, Rosa explained, written by Mrs. Reynolds during her initial treatment, detailing Mr. Reynolds' extensive personal and financial sacrifices. Note the date, 2 weeks before she signed the lease with Mr. Bennett. Hazel's hands trembled as she read her own words. I'd memorized them by heart. Mason, you're the only reason I'm fighting. Your love is stronger than this cancer. The conference room fell silent, except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Mills thumbed through his notes, clearly rattled. The judge's chambers were waiting for our final submissions. Mason, Hazel whispered, her voice catching. Please. I kept my eyes forward, letting the silence speak for itself. The judge's signature was just a scratch of black ink, but it felt like freedom made permanent. My house, my savings, my business, all protected. The settlement granted Hazel a brief support period, basically what she'd already taken. Fair, not vindictive, just like I'd promised. Walking down the courthouse steps, each footfall felt lighter than the last. The early autumn air had that crisp edge that makes you feel alive, really alive, not just going through motions. I remembered all those nights during her first treatment when I'd stand on our back porch at 3 a.m., watching my breath cloud while I waited for her nausea meds to kick in. Now I was breathing for myself again. Rosa caught up with me at the bottom of the steps, her heels clicking against concrete. You did well in there, Mason. Stayed steady. She squeezed my shoulder. The healing starts now. Already started, I said, and meant it. That evening I sat on my front porch with a cup of coffee, black and strong the way I liked it. The neighborhood was quiet except for kids playing somewhere down the block. Their laughter floated over like dandelion seeds on the wind. Remember when happiness was that simple? Just a game of tag and someone calling you in for dinner? My phone buzzed against the wooden arm of the chair. Hazel's text lit up the screen. It's worse. Can you talk? The old Mason would have jumped to answer, would have shouldered her pain like a familiar backpack. But that Mason died the day I saw her pressed against our refrigerator, laughing in Kyle's arms. I turned the phone face down and listened to the kids playing instead. The next week passed in a blur of productive silence. I threw myself into restoring an old Craftsman on the edge of town, the kind of house that had good bones but needed someone to believe in it again. Every morning I'd arrive early with coffee in my thermos, ready to coax beauty back into tired wood. The work filled my hands and cleared my head. Stripping paint, replacing rotted boards, rebuilding what time had worn away. It was like healing made visible. Each repair felt like closing a chapter, each fresh coat of paint like covering an old scar. Friday afternoon found me fine-tuning a door hinge in the front entryway. I'd spent hours getting it just right, adjusting the fit until the heavy oak swung true. The brass gleamed from polishing, catching late sunlight through wavy antique glass. I worked a drop of oil into each pivot point, then stepped back to test my work. The door swung open smooth as silk, then closed with that perfect soft creak old houses should have. Not the screech of neglect, but the gentle voice of well-loved wood. Standing there in sawdust-filtered light, listening to that door whisper shut, I felt something settle in my chest. Some last tight knot of anger finally loosening. The sound of my truck's mail slot clapping drew me outside. Among the usual bills and flyers sat a cream-colored envelope, Carol's careful handwriting spelling out my name. No return address needed. I'd recognize her precise letters anywhere. I slid my thumb under the envelope's flap, Carol's precise folds giving way without tearing. Inside, a single sheet of paper held one line in her steady teacher's hand. "We are taking care of Hazel." Something about those 7 words felt final, like the period at the end of a long book. I folded the note carefully, walked to my desk, and tucked it in the bottom drawer where I kept old warranties and instruction manuals. Things you might need someday, but probably won't. I didn't write back. The afternoon light stretched long through my workshop windows as I focused on painting trim for the craftsman's dining room. Each brush stroke laid down clean and sure. No drips, no hesitation. The silence wrapped around me like a familiar coat. Not the hollow quiet of lonely nights during Hazel's treatment, but the peace of choosing your own rhythm. Remember how silence used to feel like abandonment? Like you were somehow failing if you weren't constantly moving, helping, fixing? Now it felt like freedom. The soft swish of the brush, the faint scent of paint, the way sunlight caught dust motes dancing. It was enough. More than enough. Word filters down through mutual friends about Kyle. Amanda's revenge burned his world to ash, just like she promised. His company let him go after her scene in the lobby. His credit was shot from her emptying their accounts. His family wouldn't return his calls after she aired everything online. Last anyone heard, he was living out of his truck, picking up odd jobs for cash, dodging debt collectors. The player who thought he could steal someone else's life found out karma has teeth. Hazel moved back in with Carol and Frank. Treatment on and off, her mother driving her to appointments now. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if she stares at hospital ceilings counting tiles like she used to, if she still hates the taste of cherry-flavored medicine, if she remembers how I used to rub her feet when the neuropathy made them burn. But I don't let those thoughts take root. Her pain isn't my purpose anymore. I don't celebrate her suffering. I don't toast Kyle's downfall. I just work, rebuild, breathe. The craftsman's restoration keeps my hands busy and my mind clear. Every fixed window, every squared corner, every fresh coat of paint is another step toward something honest and strong. Tonight, standing in the entrance hall of my newly finished project, I run my palm across the smooth lid of my tool chest. The one thing I never doubted was mine. The brass nameplate catches the last sun. Mason Reynolds, Fine Woodworking. Simple truth in metal and letters. I test the front door one final time, listening to those new hinges sing their quiet song. The lock clicks solid and sure. Behind me stretches a house brought back to life. Ahead lies a path I chose for myself. You know what I learned through all this? You don't owe a second rescue to the person who drowned you the first time. Some people will pull you under, then blame you for not holding your breath longer. But you get to swim away. You get to breathe again. You get to close the door and walk toward your own light. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.